she had not only a command hallucination on the day that she killed her children, she had what is known as a delusion of influence. That is, not only did she hear a command, but she felt that her body was taken over by an external force where she was in a dream state and did not have control of her own body. It was almost like she was a puppet and someone else was pulling the strings.
You just heard the clip from the psychiatrist who is serving as an expert witness in one of the most riveting and horrific cases in the last 25 years. A mother accused of killing her 3 children by strangulation because a voice told her to save them. This and more into what happened next in today's episode of Let's Overthink It. What's up, mi gente? Welcome to my Monday's podcast of Let's Overthink It with your host, Elefante Blanco, with Lo Que Está Caliente, where we talk about psychology in all areas of life, in politics, in current events, and everywhere. Thank you for tuning in and taking time out of your schedule to connect with me today. Here today in this live virtual courthouse that you can see here. I hope the judge doesn't come in anytime soon. All right. So today we're going to talk about psychology in the area of crime. Specifically, can postpartum psychosis, which is what the psychiatrist in the first clip claimed, make mothers kill their children? I know that's a pretty heavy and serious topic, but we still have to do the joke of the day. So if you can compartmentalize what I just said, put it in a box somewhere and bring into the forefront your laughing box. All right? You did? Good. All right. So great. All right. So let's start with the joke of the day. Actually, let's do an animal joke, to kind of break the mold a little bit. Okay. Are you ready? All right. What do you call a bear with no teeth? A bear with no teeth. A gummy bear. Gummy bear, gums. Oh, man. All right. Good. All right. Hope you enjoyed that one. Rate it 1 to 10. Put it in the comment section. All right. So let's jump into the topic. Can postpartum psychosis make mothers kill their children? Well, that is the question that is being asked right now of a mother from Massachusetts who is currently on trial because she ended the life of her 3 children by strangulation. We don't even have to say allegedly, because oddly enough, there's something that the prosecution and the defense agree on, that she actually carried out this barbaric crime. So people are asking why? Why? People want to know why. But not only that, but how could she? How could she start on one kid, then the next one, and then the next one? The boy who actually appeared to try to run away, who was the last one that she went after, was still caught by his mother using her own exercise elastic bands. Many people are speechless, flabbergasted, because it's just not normal. It's against human nature to kill kids, human nature to kill other humans, right? I mean, unless you're doing it in self-defense, I guess, but you still have this feeling inside of you anyway if you did it that way. And the fact that it is even more respected by society from a mother, because we all know that mothers have this maternal instinct to protect, and that is nature. And she went totally against this natural instinct and ended their lives. The psychiatrist from the initial clip, Dr. Resnick, would have said that the command hallucinatory was doing just that. telling her to protect, but in a completely perverse way. I would say another reason society is reacting with such shock and horror is because women are not typically the violent ones. If you look at the psychology studies, or even non-psychology studies, men are usually the violent ones. If you look at the global statistics from the United Nations, men commit violent crimes 80 to 90% of the times, pretty much around the world. So to see this woman do this goes against our societal foundations, the status quo, our expectations, and our general sense of humanity, I would say. Every time I just stop to think about this case, slowly, just kind of stop and think about it, I'm reminded, wow, this really happened. This is true. Those babies are gone, just like that. They're gone. Some people could maybe understand, maybe not justify, but understand if a mother would kill if they only have one child that they have, they can say, well, she didn't really want that one child. Maybe she really wanted to do an abortion and never did, and that was always in her mind to have him or her. But after you have three, it's like you're showing the world that you do like to have kids. The mother's name is Lindsay Clancy, and many of us are wondering what happened. What flipped everything? What switch was turned on that made her do this? Well, in Lindsay's words herself, she was frustrated that she couldn't raise her last two kids the same way that she did her first one. She was frustrated about having lactation issues and other things like her kids crying at night and her being at work. And when you look at her medical and psychiatric record, you begin to see, beyond the surface, you go a little bit deeper, that what was going on in her mind, but not just in her mind, but in her body too. And that's part of the important things. One of the important things in this case, for example, she began experiencing postpartum depression after the birth of her third child, Kaylin. But she did not experience this during the birth of her first two children. Why? And it's not required, it's not mandatory, but this is a state of fact. She eventually started seeking help. She went to psychiatrists and nurse practitioners. She didn't go to any psychologists, which I personally have an issue with because I'm of the belief that mental issues must include a mental element as part of the treatment plan. You can't just rely on medications and that's it. No, I definitely don't. In my opinion, I feel that this is one of the reasons Lindsay didn't get better. Pills alone will not help you psychologically. So she did a lot. She checked herself into a psychiatric hospital for 5 days. Weeks before the killings, she called suicide hotlines a couple of times. She saw a psychiatrist 14 times. Her meds just kept going up and up in milligrams. During the court hearings, I could hear milligrams going up from 100 to 200 to 400 milligrams in different medications. And do you know how many psychiatric medications she was taking? 13, folks. Say what? 13. That's a lot. We're not talking about Tylenol, aspirin. These are meds that, even in their warning labels, the one that she was taking, it says that you can end up having thoughts of suicide by taking them. If you read the warning labels, think about that. And she was taking 13. So to be clear, the only antipsychotic medication that she was taking was Seroquel. That was the only antipsychotic medication. But when you add that to the other meds for antidepressant that she was taking, like Zoloft, Valium, Ativan, which by the way, it's been debunked that these SSRIs really help with antidepressant. But I digress. I did an episode on that if you want to check it out. Then what you get is a really wild mix when you get all of these medications of chemicals in your body, in addition to her mental issues about intrusive negative thoughts, low self-esteem, anxiety, and pretty much the rest that she was struggling with. You get a very dangerous recipe for her and possibly others, and as we saw that in January of 2023 when she killed her children. But can we really attribute her actions to this cornucopia of medications? We know that there are mothers, nationwide who are also in similar situations with postpartum depression. They can't sleep, are anxious, and are taking about the same stuff, and their kids are still living and breathing. And sometimes they're even single mothers. Unlike in Lindsay's case, she had her husband at home to support her. So what was different about Lindsay? Well, according to her, lawyers and the psychiatrist that her team hired, they're saying that she had a moment of psychosis, and during her postpartum depression that made her do it. For those of you who don't know what psychosis is, it's basically a period of time during which you lose touch with reality. And it's not always dangerous, but it's just not real. Just because you're having a psychotic episode doesn't guarantee that you're going to hurt anyone. When I worked in a psychiatric hospital about 20 years ago, there were patients who were having psychotic and delusional and those kind of thoughts. Some of them thought that they were Jesus Christ. So they were not hurting anybody. That was their psychotic delusion. So being under psychosis doesn't always mean danger. Another thing I wanted to add is that just because you're acting psychotic, this is really important, that it doesn't mean that you don't know between right and wrong. It is not part of the core features of psychosis that you lose touch with the ethics of right and wrong. Mainly, you just lose touch with reality. You don't necessarily lose touch with moral reasoning or having a conscience. So because of that, Lindsay's lawyers are saying that her psychosis, check this out, was a little bit different. How? You heard it in the beginning. The psychiatrist said it was a command hallucination and delusion of influence.
She had not only a command hallucination on the day that she killed her children, she had what is known as a delusion of influence.
Command hallucination and a delusion of influence. Kind of giving it a different spin. What kind of psychosis she was experiencing according to her lawyers and her psychiatrist. Meaning that someone, this means, that someone had taken over her faculties and was making the decisions for her. That is what it means. What was the command about? To protect her children and then kill herself, which is what she allegedly tried to do by superficially cutting her wrists and her neck and jumping out of the second floor window, which caused her to be in the wheelchair she is in the courtroom right now. This definitely gives the jury an image of her, of a sympathetic defendant. I would say that even other psychologists who are not part of Lindsay's defense team have called this whole thing of killing your children to save them, they have a term for that, altruistic filicide. Altruistic filicide. This term is a psychological term used during crimes, especially when a parent kills their children. It's just filicide. But when you add that they did it because of a misguided sense of love or protection for them, then you add the altruistic part to it and call it altruistic filicide. I think Dr. Dobson, who is a clinical forensic psychologist, explains it best. Check out this clip.
Postpartum psychosis is not the same as psychosis. Postpartum psychosis is an extreme emergency where hormones are dropping out of your body and you have weeks before you're going to do something so drastic like kill your children. If you got shot in the stomach, you'd be in the emergency room and you wouldn't check yourself out because you had a horrible doctor. It's the same thing. She was not taken seriously and she was trying to find help repeatedly. She had intrusive thoughts of hurting herself and her children. They moved into auditory command hallucinations and delusions, and it ended in an altruistic filicide where she thought that she was saving the lives of her children by killing them. It was a failure of the system and education and knowledge all around in everyone, including her husband.
Dr. Leslie.
All right, we've seen this type of argument being made in court in favor of a mother who also killed her kids, 5 of them to be exact, by drowning them in 2001. Do you remember the case? In that case, Andrea Yates in Texas stated as well that she did it to protect her children from hell. Here's a clip.
Possible.
I sat down with longtime Houston defense attorney George Parham, who represented Yates through both of her trials and fought for the insanity defense.
We, the jury, find the defendant Andrea P.A. Yates not guilty by reason of insanity.
George Parham clearly recalls the first time he met his client, Andrea Yates, one day after she killed her 5 children. The jail psychiatrist warned him.
She has a bald spot on top of her head. She's trying to scratch off the 666 off the top of her head.
Yates's original conviction in 2002 was overturned because prosecution witness Dr. Park Dietz had given false testimony. The case sparked national attention about postpartum depression and psychosis. In 2006, she was retried and acquitted.
This case is almost a watershed for mental illness in the criminal justice system.
It changed perceptions of women's mental health socially and legally.
I'm actually a little bit surprised that Lindsay hasn't attributed some of these voices to demons egging her on, since she is and her family is an active Roman Catholic. As a matter of fact, during trial, one of the prosecutors said something to that effect. Something about killing being a capital sin or something along those lines. Check out this short clip.
He testified that breakfast was great.
Yes.
And that church was beautiful.
Yes.
And in fact, the defendant, she told you that it was great and that she was glad she went to church that day on Christmas Day.
Yes, she did.
And then after that, you're aware they went down to Connecticut to see her family.
Right.
Now, are you an active member in the Catholic Church?
Yes.
So you're aware that murder is considered a mortal sin?
Counsel, could I see you over here?
Oh, yeah.
For any reason or any purpose, okay? All right, counsel.
So you were aware.
Afterwards, the judge admonished the prosecution for this and asked the comment to be stricken from the record, but the jury couldn't unhear that. So it was pretty much too late. I actually think the prosecution, I wanted to make a point about this. The prosecution could be more successful if they were not talking in such a kind of a cutthroat, insensitive way during the trial. They appear to be very callous, and they may turn the jury against them if they continue doing that. I think that if the prosecution wants to win, they need to be careful and pay attention to those soft skills, since I believe that many, many Americans, including jurors, have a soft spot for Lindsay, mainly because they have seen her many attempts at trying to get help. Like I mentioned earlier, 14 psychiatry visits, checking herself into the psychiatric hospital, calling the suicide hotline, and on and on and on. And many people, can relate to going to the medical system and later being turned away and not being helped. So bringing it back to this, altruistic psychosis, altruistic filicide I was telling you about, how common is for mothers to experience postpartum psychosis? Well, studies show that only about 2 in 1,000 experience it, and most of the times it's not about harming anybody. And it normally happens within the first 3 months of giving birth. And not 9 months, like, later Lindsay's team is saying. 9 months later, Lindsay had postpartum psychosis, which is almost unheard of in medical research. It is normally within the first 3 months. And it doesn't always happen. Like I said, it's 2 in 1,000 women. So let's fast forward to the night of the crime. Here we have Lindsay, the mother diagnosed with postpartum anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Not psychosis. Her medical record shows she never reported hearing voices at any moment during any of her psychiatric sessions. Ever. She never has that in her record before the crime. She sends her husband out to CVS and a restaurant to pick up, kids' medications and takeout food. When Patrick goes out to the pharmacy, that's her husband, something that normally takes him about 4 minutes to get to, according to the court records, it took him 17 minutes to get to the CVS pharmacy. This is when the infidelity rumors start popping up on the internet, and also other ones of him going out to like brunches and ski trips and other fun things while his wife was suffering. But again, these are rumors, and I cannot substantiate those, so I'm not going to focus too much on that, but I did want to bring that up. During Patrick's absence, is when allegedly Lindsay, all of a sudden, heard a voice telling her, save your children, kill them, and then kill yourself. She lured her 3 kids, to the basement and strangled them to death one by one. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the boy Kalen tried to run away but was caught by her. After that, Lindsay cuts her wrists and neck superficially and jumps out of the window and lands in the front of the house and passes out. When Patrick comes back to the house and calls out for her wife's name, nobody answers. Calls out the kids' names, nobody answers, and goes around the house and finds himself in the most horrific scene that he will ever experience in his life. You know why? Because parents are not supposed to bury their children. It's the other way around. That's the natural course of life. And this is really not the way anybody should die. Nobody. Patrick called 911, and the medics found Lindsay on the ground outside of the house from having jumped from the second floor window, and which you can see got her paralyzed from the waist down, and they said her body temperature was around the 80s. So she definitely could have died, because the normal body temperature of the human body is like around 97 or so, 97 degrees Fahrenheit. So in closing, I've heard lawyers and other legal experts say, wait a minute, you're telling me that she had the time to use exercise bands to strangle her first child, which are really hard to make them stick, if you ever grab one of those exercise bands, because they're so elastic. And then she had enough time to go to the second child and do the same thing? I mean, because this is really not a matter of seconds. Then, we're talking about minutes and 15 minutes and 30 minutes and, minutes going by. And then she has time to chase the last child and kill him as well? And the lawyers are saying, you're telling me that by the third child she had no conscience? That's what some lawyers are saying. One lawyer even said she had the time to form intent. She had the time to form intent. But a psychology could respond with, can you form intent under psychosis? And the lawyer can say, but psychosis doesn't last that long. At some point, she would have snapped out of it. And the psychologist would say, well, not necessarily. Psychotic episodes can last between hours, 2 weeks, 2 months. Someone could theorize that Lindsay planned this all along and send out her husband on these errands so she can carry out this heinous crime, because she was fed up with her husband's infidelity and the world not taking her seriously about her mental health conditions. Like, she wanted to kind of like prove a point. That could be a theory. Some people will go with this theory after, they saw the first things Lindsay said after waking up in the hospital bed. Do you know what she said after she woke up from the hospital bed? Some of her first sentences were, "Do I have a lawyer?" None of her comments asked about how are my children. None of them. She couldn't speak, and everything was handwritten. And in any of those handwritten notes, she didn't ask about how are my children. She asked about, can I get visits? She asked about, can I get a lawyer, or do I have a lawyer? In those first communications. On the other hand, there's another theory. It could very well be that she's one of those rare cases where a woman, after giving birth, experiences postpartum depression 9 months later, what normally is within 3 months, and on top of that, experiences psychosis a couple of weeks before a crime, never reported psychotic symptoms prior to that, and decided to follow hallucinatory voices that told her to protect their children from this world by killing them. Hey, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, they say. The last theory that I heard was that this could have been a coordinated plan between Lindsay and Patrick to get rid of their children because their relationship was unsustainable and was damaging their marriage and their kids' lives. You know, I think a bit far-fetched, but a theory nonetheless. What do you think? Really would like to hear your thoughts on this. This is a very sad, mind-blowing, and heartbreaking case that I hope to really never see again. I know we saw it back in 2001 when Miss Yates drowned her children. The final arguments for this trial are going to be this week, starting on August 24th and forward. And whatever the outcome of this case, I believe, the silver lining is a greater focus on the mental health of women, especially postpartum. If you need help out there, don't wait. You matter. You matter. And those around you will thank you. Alrighty, so this is it for today. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe, okay? And as always, before we go, I always like to finish the podcast with the word of the day. So the word of the day is vicissitude. Vicissitude. Do you know what it is? I won't tell you because like my teacher used to say, if I tell you, you won't remember it. But if you look it up, you remember it for the rest of your life. All right? God bless you, mi gente. And see you next time. All right? Take care.